Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another action-packed episode of A Work in Progress. I am your host, Brent Piles, and this is a little show we call The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. This is the Nitro edition. And with me, as always, is my co-host and tag team partner from across the ocean and from the future. He is the barroom brawling, disco dancing, dynamite chesting, intercontinental playboy. Folks, he's more over than a briefcase full of money. At GRS, I'm not going at it. Glenn, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. And I wouldn't say I was more over than a briefcase full of money.
It's hard to be more over than a briefcase full of money, because that's pretty
It
old.
certainly is if you desperately need one.
Yes, and I mean, I've never been at a time in my life where I didn't desperately need a briefcase full of money, and I know you're probably the same.
Exactly.
So yes, it is very difficult to be more over than a briefcase full of money. But Glenn, also we have good news for you. You have wrangled the prediction championship belt away from me, and you are now the champion.
Oh wow, thank you.
Do you want to know the one that won it for you?
Go on then.
Bianca Belair winning the women's elimination chamber did it for you, because me and the mayor both picked Alexa Bliss.
Mhm.
And I was absolutely stunned when Alexa Bliss got pinned. I did not see that coming.
No.
So, but other than that, I got two wrong because I picked Sammy and you guys both picked KO. We all picked Cena. We all picked Tiff and Trish. So it was the Bianca Belair that was the winner for you, Glenn.
Oh, that's good. Thank you very much.
Glenn only picked Bianca because we love this way he says Bianca.
Bianca.
It did have it was like at least 25% of the reason why you picked it.
It was. So. But that was like most of the matches on that card. I'm trying to pick a winner, that is.
Yeah. Well, we obviously know that a lot took place at that show, and we'll discuss that further when we talk with the mayor later in the week, because I know that the mayor is going to have something to say.
I bet he is.
What was probably the second biggest heel turn in the history of wrestling, right?
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
But like I said, we'll talk more about that later when we talk to the mayor, because we know he's going to have something to say. And we certainly don't want to talk about the Arsenal. Certainly don't want to talk about the Arsenal men's football club recently, because it hasn't been pretty. And we try to stay as positive as possible on the show. So we won't go there. I will say the women's team looked a little shaky today, being down 2 to West Ham, and then they got one back for Chloe Kelly, who got her first Arsenal goal in quite some time, because I don't know how long she'd been away from the club, but I know it'd been a few years.
It's been a few years, yeah.
City. And then they scored like quickly after that, and then they were down 3-1, but then they scored 3 goals within like 10 minutes. And they came out a winner 4-3. And like I said to you, I think that's just another instance of where you can see the team has developed more continuity and more toughness.
Yes.
Since Renee has taken over the club. And I think it's just another sign that they made a great decision by, I don't know why it took them so long, but they made a great decision by making her the full-time manager.
Yeah. Agreed entirely.
Definitely. But that's it for that. And now, Glenn, let's go back to 1996. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's the Great American Bash from June the 16th, 1996. It's from Baltimore. It took place in Baltimore, Maryland, at the Baltimore Arena. This was the 6th Great American Bash under the WCW banner, but the 10th overall. This was the 5th time that they had this pay-per-view at the Baltimore Arena. They also had it, 4 years in a row. 3 years in a row, and then in 1991. So 88, 89. I'm sorry, it was 88, 89, 90, and 91. So 4 years in a row they had it at the Baltimore. And then they took some years off after WCW, after Turner bought it. I think Turner bought it. And so we talked about this last week, where we were trying to figure out like when Turner bought WCW. And our good buddy UTT Rob did let me know on YouTube that it was November of 1988. So literally a month before Super Clash 3 took place, Turner owned WCW. So they were even in the AWA was trying to be in competition with him, but as we know, that did not work out. The thing that I took away most from the opening video packages that they showed, because they were like hyping the matches, is that the Giant talks like a guy who's having trouble breathing.
He does.
Hogan, you see, I'm gonna, and then we're gonna take out. It's like I feel like he needed an inhaler.
He does. But he's a
But
big
yeah,
lad.
yeah. Well, I guess that's true. He is a big guy, so maybe it's hard for him to breathe. So they get straight away into this thing with a really hard hitting tag team match. It's Fire and Ice, which is Ice Train and Scott Norton.
Just before that, can we just say that this is WCW and we didn't go straight into a match?
Well, no.
There was lots of talking between Tony and Dusty before we got into the match.
Yeah, which is something I noticed like from mostly all WCW pay-per-views. They usually have like a little minute and a half, 2 minutes to 3 minutes thing where the announcers kind of give us like a rundown of the card too. And it really got that from WWE. I think they're starting to do it a little bit more now, where the premium live event will start and then you'll see Michael Cole and whoever talk a little bit before they get into the matches.
Yeah.
But back on this era, WWE, I don't think they were really doing that. They might have done it for a second, but they were mostly getting right into the matches. So it was just like a different sort of feel. You know what I mean? But yes, Fire and Ice, Ice Train and Scott Norton versus the Steiner Brothers. I guess these teams had a couple of matches before that ended in countouts and disqualifications. So they said this one is anything goes, which to me, I mean, they said there must be a winner. So to me, that means anything goes.
Anything goes.
This wasn't really an anything goes match. It was just a standard tag team match, pretty much.
Oh, of course. Especially after what we watched at the weekend.
Yeah, it was nothing like that. Yeah.
No. That's there you go.
I mean, so back in 1996, and I couldn't exactly tell you why or put my finger on why, but I was a big fan of the tag team Fire and Ice. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because like Ice Train was like a big guy he had like a big personality. You know what I mean? The guy had a lot of charisma, and maybe I just kind of was like drawn to that. I don't know, but I was always really happy when I saw these guys on the TV screen when I was 12 years old, and I was really upset when they broke up, which we'll get to that, I'm sure, in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
What did you think about this? This is a hoss fight, right?
This was definitely a hoss fight. You had Fire and Ice, Norton and Ice Train, two big hefty geezers who like to throw down, as I put it, against the Steiners, who had returned following stints in WWF and ECW and New Japan. So they were just back in WCW. As you said, they had a few matches that had ended in DQs or dodgy finishes.
Yeah.
So this one was going to be a fight to the finish. It was good. It was Jim Ross would call a real slobber knocker of a match.
Yeah, I think it's this one. If you looked up slobber knocker in the dictionary, I think you would find this one in there.
It would be this one. It's just a shame that the crowd didn't really buy into Fire and Ice the same way as the 12-year-old Brent did.
I was going to say, if there had been, 20,000 Brents before a 12-year-old Brents in the crowd, I would have been going nuts. I would have been booing the Steiners. And I mean, this match had a lot of hard-hitting stuff. I mean, you didn't see a lot of, high-flying moves. Well, they did do some stuff off the top rope, and the Steiners, kind of do some stuff off the top rope. This isn't one of those kind of matches. I mean, there was lots of clotheslines, power slams. Norton hit like a beautiful reverse shoulder breaker on Rick Steiner, which is, I mean, that's easy to do to a cruiserweight, but not easy to do to Rick Steiner, even if you are Scott Norton. I mean, this match was really good. One thing I took away from it was like at one point Norton's got he's got Scott Steiner in like an armbar thing, and then Rick Steiner gets it and he just starts hauling off and kicking Scott Norton in the face, and motherfucking Ice Train just stood on the goddamn apron and watched that shit. I'd have been pissed.
Yeah, you would think so, wouldn't you?
I saw when I was a kid, I always thought Norton was the bad guy and he was the reason the team broke up. After this, I'm starting to think it was Ice Train.
Yeah.
Because if we're tag team partners, Glenn, and some guy gets in the ring and starts hauling off, kicking me in the face, I expect you to get under there and do something about that. I don't expect you to just watch.
You're meant to be a team.
Yeah.
The clue is in the tag team.
Right. Yeah. The clue is
not stand there and watch your partner get the shit kicked out of him.
Yeah, so that was one of my notes from this match. I mean, it really started to be all over the place toward the end, and I mean that in a good way. I mean, these guys were fucking jumping off top ropes, they were fucking hitting body slams, they were hitting clotheslines. It was just all over the place at the end.
Yeah.
Finally, Steiner hits a Frankensteiner on Norton, and then pins him for the 3 count. It looked like Ice Train was trying to pin Rick Steiner at the same time, but like Rick Steiner was laying under the bottom rope, so that doesn't count anyway. So yeah, the Steiners win this one, and I mean, if you're gonna start a pay-per-view and you got this match on your show, I think it's a great way to start the show for sure.
Yep. Yeah, it was definitely a nice warmer upper.
100%. Yeah.
It wasn't brilliant, but it wasn't that bad that you would think, why are we bothering with this?
Yeah, it wasn't one of the matches where you look at it and go, huh, this could have been on Nitro, which a couple of these matches
that's right.
Could have been. We then hear from Jimmy Hart and the Taskmaster, where Jimmy Hart is telling him that they don't need the 4 horsemen. Sullivan, who's been saying this for all the episodes that we cover, that he trusts Arn Anderson and Ric Flair, but he knows Benoit doesn't have what it takes to be a horseman. And then he talks about how he's going to hurt Benoit tonight because they have a falls count anywhere match. We then get into the United States Championship match, which is Conan, who is the United States champion, and he's taking on El Gato. And El Gato is who under a mask one?
That's Pat Tanaka.
Yes.
So it's a faux Japanese guy playing a faux Mexican guy.
Yeah, because Pat Tanaka is like a Hawaiian guy, isn't he?
He is.
Or like from Philippines or something like that.
Yeah,
he's definitely not.
Yeah, one of the South Sea islands.
Yeah, he's just not. He's not from Japan. That's all I know. And like I didn't know that it was El Gato, and I didn't know that Pat Tanaka ever worked as El Gato, but apparently he did, like sporadically through 96 through 98. Doing undercard matches. And an interesting note that I found online was that he used to come out to Goldberg's, what would turn out to be Goldberg's theme when he wrestled this El Gato in WCW, which is pretty interesting if you think about it.
Yeah.
And you could tell by looking at him that that's fucking Pat Tanaka. Like I didn't know until I looked it up, but when he came out, I went, it's fucking Pat Tanaka. Well, all in all, I thought this was a decent match too.
I don't know why they just couldn't have had Tanaka as Tanaka though, rather than put him in a mask.
Yeah, I mean that I didn't understand either, because you could clearly tell it was Pat. Anybody who'd seen Pat Tanaka before knew that was Pat Tanaka.
He took some nice bumps from it. He knew that Conan was going to win, and it killed the crowd really.
They did get a big pop at the end of it though, when Conan got the win with he used like an electric chair and then like a jackknife in, and it did get a good reaction from the crowd. And I don't know if maybe that's just people in Baltimore hate people in masks. I'm not sure. But I don't think that's the case, because they didn't hate Rey Mysterio when we talk about
No, I don't think it was that. It was just the fact that it was a mask.
This is one of those matches where if I looked out on the card, I would be like, well, this is a fast forward through match. But it was actually pretty decent. It had high flying stuff, submission stuff, high impact stuff. It was like a different sort of Conan to watch wrestle than I'm used to, because I'm used to the Odole by Viva Valasa Conan. And he had like a different, wrestling style than this guy does. He was like more of a brawler, and this is more like a, high flying luchador. So it was a nice change of pace. And I mean, not the greatest match in the world, but still a pretty decent match.
Yeah, especially the ending. And the crowd seemed to enjoy the ending as well, when Pat El Gato, shall I say, got power bombed outside the ring.
Oh, yeah. I think that's when the fans started to turn around and they started actually getting some reactions, because it took them a little bit, but eventually I think the fans did come around. I think it was a power bomb on the outside of the ring that really got going.
It was, and then Conan rolled him back in. The Alabama Slammer, and he gets the 3 count.
Yeah, so Conan remains the United States champion. We got a promo from Sting, and I realized that this is the 90s and like it was different or whatever, but like I didn't like the tone of this promo.
Mm-hmm.
The way he was saying that, Regal's prissy and he's a little bit different, and he doesn't understand him, and he's he's worried about how prissy he is, and it felt very homophobic to me, and I did not like the tone of it.
Yes, definitely. But as we know, that's not true.
Yeah, we definitely know that's not true. But we then get into the first match on this card where I could have went, well, they should have just saved that for Nitro. It's DDP taking on Marcus Bagwell, and I want to tell everybody out there that this is not the DDP Buff Bagwell match that you're picturing at home. This is DDP with a big cigar in his mouth and a big jacket and crazy hair and a weird gimmick against just regular old American males. Buff Bagwell. So this isn't quite Buff Bagwell yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, as you say, this was just a nothing match. Could have been put on Nitro, and nobody would have been any the wiser.
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting thing I can say is they were talking about how the American males flipped a coin to see who would face DDP tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the other thing, like Buff Bagwell did like a dive over the top rope onto DDP, and I can't remember for the life of me Buff Bagwell ever doing a dive out of the ring.
No.
Unless it was by accident, you know what I mean? Like he fell.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is that the commentary put over the Diamond Cutter. This is at the time when DDP was just starting to use it, and the commentary went mad about it.
Yeah, definitely. I remember Dusty Rhodes being like, "Oh, the most devastating finisher of wrestling today, the Diamond Cutter," which they're still saying that today. The most devastating finisher of wrestling today, the RKO. So,
yeah,
you can see the longevity of that there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was good. And I mean, all in all, you wouldn't think like this would be. It wasn't a bad match. It's just it was very strange, and it didn't feel like it belonged on a pay-per-view. That's the only reason why I say a nothing match. If this had been on an episode of Nitro that we reviewed, Glenn, we would have been like, "Wow, what a pleasantly surprised match." But since it's a pay-per-view, we're like, why is this on here?
Why is it on here?
And it ends like every DDP match that we've watched so far. Like DDP's getting beat up, and then he'll do something and hit a Diamond Cutter out of nowhere, and it gets low in. So
yeah.
So there's that. We then go to another promo that features Jimmy Hart, and I swear, Jimmy Hart's like, if there is a camera on, I'm gonna be in front of it.
Yeah, he's in everything.
He's got the Giant with him. Giant again is talking like he can't breathe. He lists off all the people he's beaten in WCW thus far. I've been, and then I've been, and then I've been. It sounded something like that. It says Luger's going to be his latest victim, and he should have lifted a few more weights if he wanted to get in the ring with him, which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, and he was just going on about that he wasn't frightened to torture Rack because Luger's not going to be able to get him into one.
I mean, if I was the Giant, I would probably felt that way too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We then go into the Cruiserweight Championship match. The Cruiserweight Champion at this time, Dean Malenko, will be defending his belt against a newcomer making his WCW debut. Maybe you've heard of this guy, Glenn. Maybe Rey Misterio Jr. You heard of this guy?
Yeah. Wrestled in Mexico, went to ECW, and then into WCW. Is that right?
I believe that's true. Yes. I believe that was the trajectory of career. I believe he has a son who's an asshole, right?
That is definitely true.
So I thought. Cruiserweight Championship was pretty new up at this point in WCW. The first champion was crowned in March of 1996. Although WCW did have the light heavyweight championship, but that only ran from October of 1991 until September of 1992. So, and I mean, not only two of the best wrestlers in the world, probably in 1996, I would say these are two of the best wrestlers in the world ever.
Yeah, that's right.
As far as in-ring wrestling, and I don't think anybody can argue that.
No, you can't argue that at all.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is this is the first time that they faced off against each other. Obviously, they would go on to have many more matches in WCW and probably in WWF too, but this is the first of many. And I thought this was just like a classic very good all around wrestling match. It had everything in it.
Oh yeah, and you could tell the crowd got into it really quickly, and that was thanks to Ray really showing what he could do with all the high flying moves and basic lucha stuff that we've become to love.
Yeah, and like I can say this because I was very young. I was 12 years old when this happened. Seeing someone come out there who was smaller in stature,
Yeah,
you're immediately going to be drawn to that because you're somewhat smaller in stature because you're a little kid. And then just see him get in there and start doing all that crazy shit that he does. I mean, how do you? That's immediately going to connect with anyone, especially little kids. And then he's got cool masks and they're all different colors. Like, forget about it. Rey Mysterio was my favorite wrestler in WCW for years, and I was always hoping he could win, the world title. I knew that's ridiculous, but he would obviously go on to do that. But yeah, I mean, this was great. Yeah, like you said, didn't take long for the crowd to get into it. I mean, it's really a clash of styles too, because while Dingo can do the high flying stuff, he's more of a mat based wrestler. So you got the high impact, high paced wrestling of Rey Mysterio versus the mat based wrestling of Dean Malenko. Just really a classic wrestling match.
And they really did Ray a big favor by putting him in there in his first pay-per-view match against Dean Malenko. He really put him over.
Yeah, I mean, he made him look like $1 million. And even at the end, Dean does get the win, but he does it by making him look like he cheated to win and he got lucky because he countered a Hurricane Rana by Ray and then did a power bomb and then kind of put his feet up on the turnbuckles to help him get the 3 count. And yeah, this is my favorite match on the show. There's another match that was a very close second that I'm sure might be your first favorite match on the show, but for me, going back and watching any cruiserweight matches from this era in WCW are always going to do it for me. So, really great match.
Yeah. And even Dean Malenko got cheers at the end from the crowd. So,
yeah, even the
everybody was happy with this one.
Even the cheating. Baltimore feels like a heel town anyway. So,
yeah.
After the match, we then hear from Lex Luger. It was boring. Long story short. Then it's time for the blood feud between the half-shaven John Tenta and Big Bubba. John Tenta still was sporting the half cut off hair. Now, don't get me wrong. Back in the early 80s, back in the early 90s, late 80s, these guys could have had a barn burner of a match.
The best you could say is that the great John Tenta, the most gorgeous man in the world.
That's right.
Sold well.
There's not a whole lot else you can say about this, though.
No, that's about it. That is my note.
Yeah, Jimmy Hart's got scissors. They're like teasing, cutting more of John Tenta's hair. But my thing was like, you already cut off half his hair, and he left the other half on there. You think you're going to embarrass him further if you cut the other half off? I don't think so.
No. But it didn't happen because Tenta got the win.
That's right. Tenta took the scissors after he won, and he cut some Big Bubba's beard off too with those scissors. So got a little bit of revenge. And if you think that was fun, Glenn, just wait till the next WCW pay-per-view we'll review, Bash at the Beach, where they have a silver dollar city match. You know what that is?
No.
They put a bunch of silver dollars in a sock or something,
and
then they put them on a pole.
Yeah.
And then you got these two big motherfuckers who have no business climbing anything, trying to climb a pole. That'd be fun, right?
Of course. Can't wait to see that.
That's going to be great. That's going to be a good time. We then hear from Steve Mongo McMichael and his tag team partner, Kevin Green. They'll be taking on Flair and Arn Anderson tonight, of course. They might have been good at football, but they were not good at cutting promos. I can tell you that right now.
No.
Because this wasn't good. Until Macho Man came in to save
Macho Man saves it, yeah. I've got here as the note.
Which they should have had Macho Man open, and then those two big dummies could have said like 5 words each, and then they could have closed it out, and it would have been a lot better.
Yeah.
And then we get into the Falls Count Anywhere match between Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit. Apparently, a lot have been going on between these two in regard to the Horseman Dungeon of Doom alliance, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
I mean, for a Falls Count Anywhere match, this was fine, but it didn't have enough violence in it that I think a Falls Count Anywhere match.
It was just a good brawl, really.
Right, yeah.
It's just strange that and you can see why Kevin Sullivan was trying to bring in the sort of ECW style of wrestling to WCW, but it didn't just quite gel right.
I think it does if you get the right participants in it. I don't know. I just felt like maybe these weren't the two best guys to do it. Anything that involves Kevin Sullivan and Chris Benoit, I'm always going to look at it weirdly, and I don't know.
Yeah, obviously,
yeah, I'm sure most people do. And like I always say, I try to separate, like what happened in real life from like what I see on the TV screen, because it's a TV show. And I even try to do that today because obviously there's some wrestlers or people involved in wrestling that are less than disparaging people to me in real life, in my humble opinion. So I just try to not think about that. So yeah, I mean, the most violent thing in this thing was they were slamming each other in the bathroom stall doors. And other than that, there wasn't like chair shots or this was nothing like the Kevin Owens Sami Zayn match last night. Is what I'm saying. I feel like since it was a blood feud, there should have been more. And I think it was like WCW they want to do the ECW hardcore stuff, but they can't go completely past that line because they have, the Turner suits that aren't going to let them do that. So they kind of had to do this, but stay in the parameters of what they do. You know what I mean?
That's right. At the end of the day, Chris Benoit wins by putting Sullivan off the suplexing Sullivan off the table back into the ring for a 3 count. It was all right. It was all right as a wrestling match, but it wasn't great as a Falls Count Anywhere match.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the strongest tables in wrestling history because they did a lot to that table and it never broke.
Never broke, no.
They took it and they put it up on the top rope, and then Benoit suplexed him off that, and that's how he beat him. After the match, Benoit keeps beating on Sullivan, but Arn Anderson hits the ring. He pulls Benoit off. It looks like he's gonna, help Sullivan, but then he starts beating Sullivan up too. They both start beating up Sullivan. The rest of the Dungeon of Doom makes the save. So I guess that Horseman Dungeon of Doom alliance is over. Because after the match, we hear from Arn Anderson. He says the head of the snake has been cut off. He says that, Sullivan's trying to break up the Horseman, but Benoit's earned the right to put the Horseman shirt on. He says that they're ready for battle. Then Ric Flair talks about Bobby, and then Ric Flair and Bobby Heenan talk too. The most funny thing from this was Bobby Heenan looking like a pale white ghost at the thought of being beaten up by Randy Savage. He's like, I'm not scared. Do I look scared? Yeah, you look terrified. So I thought that was a pretty fun promo. And then we went into what was another classically great wrestling match. It's his lordship, Steven Regal, battling Sting. Glenn, what did you think about this one?
One of the best matches on the show, as far as I'm concerned. But then again, it's got Regal in it, so why wouldn't I think that?
Well, that's fair, though, I think.
It just had a bit of everything. Now, they were back and forth. Regal gets Sting in the Regal stretch, but Sting won't submit from it, and it was just a really good match.
This felt like another match. I think we talked about it last time. Regal had a good match on Nitro that could have been on NXT UK. You know what I mean? This could have been an NXT UK match.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, so it's not going to be for everyone. If you don't like that sort of style of wrestling, then it's not for you. But Sting did a good job of staying with Lord Steven Regal.
Yeah, I mean Sting. I think was always a really good in ring wrestler. Hey, he's one of the few guys who has who had a larger than life gimmick, but could also back it up in the ring. I think a lot of guys had larger than life gimmicks, but they didn't really have larger than life in ring wrestling ability. But Sting's not one of those guys. So yeah, this was one of those matches like the Rey Mysterio, Dean Malenko in a different way. Really had everything that you would want in a wrestling match. I just love when Regal has someone in a submission hold and then taking the opportunity to cut a promo to the camera while they're in the said submission hold. I just think that's fucking great shit, and more people nowadays should do that in wrestling.
They should.
It's just really good, and yeah, you're never gonna find a match, especially with the two people who host this show, that has his lordship in it, where we're probably not gonna rave about it. And Regal's one of those guys. Like when I was a kid, when I was 12, I didn't care about Lord Steven Regal when he comes out on the screen. I probably rolled my eyes, but as an adult who appreciates the sport of professional wrestling more than I did as a child, Regal is somebody that I love to watch every time he's on the screen. I mean, like Triple H in a different way is kind of the same thing, because I didn't really care for Triple H as a child, but when I watch him now as an adult, he's just so cerebral and so good in the ring, and I feel the same way about Regal. So, yeah, great match. Sting does end up getting the win after he hits a back body drop and then locks in the Scorpion Death Lock. And Regal has no choice but to submit. But yeah, definitely a great match. You could go 1 and 1A between which was the better match of that one or the Malenko Mysterio match, because they were both really great.
They were.
But obviously in their own different ways. We then go to the tag team match that everyone's been raving about, and I was really surprised that this wasn't the main event.
Just before that, I don't know where you watched it, but there was a little promo for Bash at the Beach, which wasn't good.
I must have either stepped out of the room or it's not on there, because I don't remember that.
Yeah. All right, that's enough of that then. We go to the next match.
I'll have to go back and see. I was surprised that this one wasn't the main event, just because it's been hyped so much that I know the world title should be the main event, but like when you have a big match that's hyped and you've got guys who don't typically wrestling, they usually put those as the main event. So I was surprised that this wasn't. It's Ric Flair and Arn Anderson taking on Steve Mongo McMichael and Kevin Green. Savage is in the corner of McMichael and Green, of course, as their coach, and Bobby Heenan is the coach of Flair and Anderson. Didn't have high hopes for this match going in, because I remember how Mongo wrestled, and I didn't think that there was any way that Kevin Green could be much better. He wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. Somewhat entertaining because it's Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, but at the same time, boring. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can understand what you meant. But the footballers did as best as they could. They certainly didn't disgrace themselves.
No, we've certainly seen worse, celebrity outings in wrestling.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, and I mean, football players usually do pretty well because that's already physical. You know what I mean? Like a basketball player or something like that's not going to do as well in wrestling.
No, footballers take bumps anyway. So
exactly, exactly. Yeah, and when you get them in there with guys who know what they're doing, like Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, it's not really that hard, because most of this match is them getting one of, either Mongo or Green, isolating them, cutting off the ring, working toward the hot tag. They finally get the hot tag. That's most of what this match was. And obviously, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson know what they're doing. So, I mean, if I had to give this match a star rating, I would probably say 2.5 stars, which is a lot better than it had any business being. You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So they eventually, so Kevin Green's wife's out there with Deborah McMichael. Eventually, Woman and Liz sort of run them off, and then toward the end of the match, they've got Kevin Green in the Ric Flair has Kevin Green in the figure 4 in the ring, and we see Deborah coming back down to the ring with Miss Elizabeth and Woman in tow. She's carrying a briefcase, and she's got a new fancy evening gown on, which she did not have on earlier when we saw her.
That's right.
She then starts talking to her husband. They have a little argument. She opens the briefcase to reveal a 4 Horsemen t-shirt and a whole lot of money. And as he's looking at that, Kevin Green has managed to turn the figure 4 over, and he's kind of looking at Mongo, trying to get him to tag. Mongo takes the briefcase, wallops Kevin Green in the face with it, turns on his tag team partner. Kevin Green gets pinned. Mongo has taken the money. He's joined the Four Horsemen. They beat them down along with Randy Savage. And Ric Flair and Ric Flair gets the better of the Macho Man once again.
Yeah. As he seems to do a lot.
I also thought it was funny during this match they were talking about Steve Mongo McMichael was on the legendary 85 Bears team that people say is one of the best teams in the history of football. I didn't get to enjoy it because I was only fucking 6 months old. The Bears have been bad since I've been alive. But anyway, they were talking about how at the end of McMichael's career, he left the Bears to go play for the Packers for the season. If you don't know, the Packers and Bears are bitter rivals. We hate them. They hate us. And they asked him why he did it, and he said for the money. And it was just funny because I remember watching wrestling with my grandfather in 1996 and seeing Steve Mongo McMichael on there, and my grandpa voicing his very displeasure of Steve Mongo McMichael leaving the Chicago Bears and going to the Green Bay Packers like he was some sort of fucking hero. That's what my grandpa said. And my grandpa didn't curse very often, so he did not like Steve Mongo McMichael.
No, it's not.
Which I thought was funny. So yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a decent match that was a little bit better than anybody probably thought it was going to be. We then get into a very interesting segment that has been replayed for many years. Eric Bischoff comes out. He talks about how we've had some interruptions on Nitro over the last couple of weeks, and these guys want an answer. And so he brings them out. Scott Hall, Kevin Nash. We still haven't named them yet. The fans are big pop for these guys, obviously. He first tells them that yes, they will get their match, but it will be at the next month's pay-per-view at Bash at the Beach. He then wants to know if they work for the WWF. Scott Hall says they do not. That the past is the past. We're going to talk about the future. They want to know who the three guys are. Bischoff says he can't name them. This does not make them happy. So Hall punches him in the gut, sets him up. Nash powerbombs him off the stage through a table, which for 1996, this was one hell of a spot for anything that wasn't ECW. So, I mean, this was pretty fucking cool.
Oh, it definitely was. Especially knowing what it's going to be, what it sets up.
Yeah, and I thought it was funny. Hall gets on the mic and says, the real big boys have left the building, which I totally forgot that ever happened.
Yeah.
And then we see them taking Bischoff out. That was a pretty cool fucking moment. I remember everyone in school talking about that the next day.
Yeah, I like the fact that Lex Luger checked on Bischoff as he was coming out.
Oh, did he? I must have missed that.
Yeah.
I must have missed that part. Yeah, so then it's the main event of the evening. Lex Luger battling the Giant for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. I thought it really hurt this match to have it take place after the big swerve of the tag team match and then after what happened with Hall, Nash, and Eric Bischoff. I think the crowd was just a little bit flat for it because they had already taken all the wind out of that sail. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how can you get all that up for a fucking match with fucking baked potato face and a guy who can't breathe?
Yeah, and the Giant. It got not much about this one. It wasn't the most exciting match in the world, but it was about the story and was probably the best you were going to get from these two idiots.
Yeah, especially at this point. I mean, Luger's never been known as the greatest wrestler, so for him to lead a guy like the Giant who's been in the business all of like a year at this point. I know he's the world champion, but he really hasn't been doing this for that long, so you weren't going to get anything really great from this match. Eventually gets the Giant like strung on the top rope, like he's laying across the top rope, and he tries to pick him up for the torture rack, and then he can't do it, so he falls forward. All the Giant's weight goes down on Luger's head. He's unconscious, but he picks him up and choke slams him for measure. We get the 1, 2, 3, and of course the Giant retains the world title. And Lex Luger still has a baked potato face, but now it's a mashed baked potato face because his face has been smashed. And then they went off the air faster than I've ever seen the WCW pay-per-view go off the air. Because usually they talk for 5-10 minutes after it's over. So
yeah,
that was a bit surprising to me.
It was. The only thing I've got on note from that match is that it was rare at this time for a WCW pay-per-view main event to finish with a clean finish.
I mean, yeah, we haven't really. This is our first WCW 1996 pay-per-view to review, but if you looked at the books, you're probably on point with that. Yeah,
and I have.
And Glenn, of course, has checked the books now. He's not just some Johnny come lately making this stuff up.
No. Let's rate this thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what do you think? Is this a 2 thumb up show or just 1?
I would say 1.5.
You know what? I think I'm 100% with you on there. There was enough good on this to say that it gets 1.5.
Yeah.
But then a couple of matches that you kind of scratched your head and wondered why this was ever on a pay-per-view at all. So we've definitely watched worse.
Yeah, it was definitely watchable. We've watched worse, and there's a few good stories and angles being pushed forward from this. Nothing was really left hanging.
Well, so I think like the common misconception I think of WCW in this era was like it was completely terrible until the NWA came in. But I thought the WCW had kind of turned a corner coming into 1996 because they still have the Dungeon of Doom shit, but it's not as silly as it used to be. Like they don't have the Southern my son, like that guy's gone, so like it's not as silly anymore. So I do think WCW started to get a little bit more better and a little bit edgier in 1996, even before the NWO showed up. And I think we saw it on this show here.
Yes.
So yeah, there we go. That is it for WCW Great American Bash 1996. So then, who do you want to plug before we get out of here?
I'm booking the territory, the first and last of wrestling and SI projects, unstacking the territory, the road to Wembley for 1981 for Giant Haystacks and Big Daddy, and the most watched wrestling match at 18 million viewers all time. Also, I'm booking the Tankatory, the life and times of Tank Abbott, and being the elite Gator Golf, which is not as bad as it sounds. So give it a listen.
It's better than it sounds, a lot better.
And of course,
the Doctor Who podcast with Danny Inside. That is an SJP World Media.
And finally, DDT Wrestling with DC and Doc.
Give all those fine people listening and following. Give a follow to our friend and cohort, our other member of our tag team partner. He's our Terry Gordy, I guess, if you will. He's our heater, the Mayor of Canton. Give him a follow. He's at Mayor of Canton. And of course, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube so you can check out everything we've got going on. If you're interested to hear how we feel about the heel turn of John Cena, you will hear all about that when we talk with the mayor this week. And I think we're gonna watch a Saturday night's main event that doesn't actually have a mess of hillbillies in it. We were supposed to watch it once, and I picked the wrong one, so I'm gonna get the right one this time. And we're gonna get the hillbillies because I love hillbillies. God damn it, get a deal for us. But yeah, I don't have anything else to plug. I swear we'll have some more episodes of The Life and Times of Psycho Sid. At some point, we're going to get back to it. I've just been a little busy, but we will get there, I promise. Just subscribe to us on YouTube so you'll know everything that's going on. And I am back on Blue Sky. They suspended, I guess they let me have my account back because I told them that I don't know how my account could be considered as fake or spammy when I don't do any of that. And they must have agreed because I'm back now. So follow me on Blue Sky. It's WIPod. I don't have anything else to say. Glenn, you know what to do. Tell them goodbye.
Goodbye.